Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. Have you been hurt in an accident? Have you slipped in a restaurant kitchen and knocked boiling water on your crotch? Have you had a maitre d' bury a butcher knife into your skull? Call Humboldt, Carver, and Lee. You may be entitled to compensation. That's Humboldt, Carver, and Lee. Excuse me, listeners, I don't know what came over me. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And today we are diving back into Everything's Eventual, covering lunch at the Gotham Cafe with CM leading the discussion. CM, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. First, have you read this short story before?
This was a first.
Awesome. I read it when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered it, though. It was one in this book that very much stuck out to me.
That's interesting, because I enjoy this story, but I don't know that it strikes me as memorable beyond the, now I know where the blood tadpole comes from on the cover of the book.
Yeah, reading it as a teenager and reading it as an adult who knows what marriage and relationships are like is a very different experience.
And yeah, okay.
And I think it was the swerve of what we'll get to that happens that when I first read it, my brain wasn't even like, where is this going to go? Because I was just a dumb kid. So it truly surprised me, but we will get to that. Before we do, I just want to mention that this story won the 1995 Bram Stoker Award for Best Long Fiction.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wild. And here I was just talking shit.
Oh, you don't know anything, Josh, right?
I've never been accused of knowing anything on this show.
Never been accused of knowing something. So the story follows Stephen Davis, who comes home one day to a letter from his wife. Letter, note, whatever. Her name is Diane, and the letter says that she's leaving him, pursuing a divorce, and he's going to hear from her lawyer. And she has already cleaned out her stuff except for one sweater that says something like live, laugh, love, whatever the version of that was at the time.
Right.
Like rich blonde bitch or something. You know what? I refuse to look it up. Mm-hmm. And so he calls her parents' house to talk to her that night, and she refuses to talk to him. It is just absolutely done.
It reminded me of LT.
Yeah.
Because of that abrupt coming home, finding a note, and then at least he sees her again. Like LT. Yeah. But it's also, I don't know why it struck me so strange that she signs it, take care of yourself. It seems like the entire story, I don't understand the tone of this relationship.
Oh, good. Because I have a few thoughts about the relationship stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's a strange story that we're about to get into.
Yeah, it is.
2 days later, Stephen gets a call from a William Humboldt, that is Diane's lawyer. And he's telling him, I'm going to send you some preliminary paperwork. Don't do anything with your finances. Don't change anything. Mm-hmm. Don't buy anything big. Don't sell anything. Keep all of your receipts for everything, which tells us like right away, ooh, there's a lot of assets to fight over and this might get really messy. Oh, and please get a lawyer. Josh,
yes.
What did you think of this interaction between Stephen and William? Because it gets a little bit tense.
I love that he hangs up on him for calling him Steve. Great moment. Mm-hmm. It's so funny because it's Steve just basically is trying to get answers because we are left thinking he has no idea what has caused this. And so what he thinks he's getting into is being able to talk to her and figure this out. And the fact that Humboldt continually barrels through this and shuts him down starts to piss him off. And I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. I'm glad you phrased it that way because Humboldt refers to this upcoming divorce as dissolving your domestic corporation, which is such a cold and clinical way to describe that
Mhm.
when, from our perspective, Steve just got this letter telling him basically nothing. She refuses to talk to him. And now these very clinical terms are being thrown at him for a thing that is like, possibly he feels like it's the end of his life right now.
Right.
So Steve gets a lawyer and he stops smoking. Smoking being a thing that he has done for about 20 years and something that Diane really wanted him to stop doing.
In fact, she wouldn't even consider getting pregnant.
Mm,
At least we got, like, that's an interesting piece, for sure.
yeah, we're getting little hints of like these insights into their marriage. And it's all kind of stuff like this. There isn't what we're given is not a lot or really definitive.
You know what I loved about his nicotine withdrawal?
Hmm.
Is there's something, a line in it says, basically going through the nicotine withdrawal, because he does it cold turkey, just quits, gave his suffering a vocabulary.
I wrote
And
that
like,
down too.
that's so fucking cool.
It's because we get like 2 pages of this short story, which isn't super long, about how much he's struggling with quitting but sticking to it. And that's when he thinks of, this giving his mind something to focus on, described as, it gave my mind something concrete to pitch upon. It gave my misery a vocabulary it would not otherwise have had. It's lines like that that make me feel like I'm a worthless piece of shit who's never done anything productive in my life.
It's lines like that win you a Bram Stoker award.
Yeah, that's true. We have a bit of foreshadowing here where Steve thinks that quitting when he did may have played a part in what happened at the Gotham Cafe that day. What did you think of that moment?
I was unsure. I assumed that it was going to be him being ill-tempered. So I thought he was going to do something that was going to cause this to just avalanche. I was very wrong.
It's funny because that is very much the way that it's set up to be for the reader. Humboldt calls Steve with a plan for all 4 of them, so that'd be the 2 attorneys and Diane and Steve, to meet, and they settle on a place, the Gotham Cafe. And here we get a little bit more marriage insight when Steve is thinking that he hadn't seen Diane since the morning she left the note, and he hadn't even really seen her then because her face had been buried in the pillow, and he hadn't talked to her that day at all. I don't know, like, and no judgment if people do this, but do you leave the house without saying bye to your, like, even if she's sleeping?
Only if I'm furious. That's the only instance. Yeah. Only if I'm so angry that I don't want to start a conversation.
Right. So there's nothing here to tell us that he didn't see her because he was angry. So kind of tells you like maybe their marriage is not very loving. Or I don't know.
He seems like the least perceptive person in the world because it's not here yet, but we'll get to it later, where he's thinking about seeing her. And he's like, I bet she's going to be wearing this dress that I like. She's going to do her hair this way. She's going to be like, this is how she's going to look to get a rise out of me. And it's all wrong.
Yeah, it's all about him and his mind. And which sets him up for surprise, which whether that surprise is justified or not, I can't say. When he finally does see her and sees her reaction to him too, which we'll get to. That's probably one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Steve starts thinking, as you said, about how desperately he wants to see her and sort of like building this moment in his mind about how it's going to play out. So we come to the morning of the scheduled meeting. Steve calls his lawyer, who he had hired, John Ring, and well, actually his lawyer calls him because something happened and he's going to have to reschedule. His mother had an accident, so he has to go help her out. Their conversation is wild, and I love it.
Is it because you can hear the exasperation in the lawyer's voice?
Yeah, I worked for a law firm for like 10 years, so all the lawyer stuff, I'm like, But it's just how the conversation starts off, kind of like matter of fact, and then pretty quickly on, Steve is like, okay, so, and John's like, you're going to go anyway, aren't you? And he's like, I really want to see her. John's like, fine, go see her, but do not talk and do not sign anything. And I love the threat that he leaves him with.
Yeah, he basically says, if you fuck this up because I can't be there and you're going anyway, and this goes bad at trial or whatever, I will drag you out and say, yeah, I told you so, in front of God and everybody.
I just love it because John's just like, man, I got more important shit to worry about.
Right.
So I'm telling you, terrible idea. Do not do it. You're going to do it anyway. Try not to mess up my case too terribly.
Even's like, not even hypothetically. Like, agree to anything. Don't discuss anything. You can see her and handle that conversation, but nothing else.
This, for some reason, that stressed me out.
That he was going anyway?
Yes.
Because it's a stupid idea.
Yeah, because he's so emotional about it. And she, based on her note and the fact that she refused to talk to him, she's like 100% done.
Yeah.
Like, you know that already. Well, probably if you're a woman. Like, you get that. If you're a guy, maybe you don't understand it. But yeah,
you don't go to a place when someone else has a lawyer and you don't. It's
no,
just not how
never.
it works. It's so stupid.
That's like talking to the police without an attorney when you've killed someone. I assume.
Allegedly.
So here we find out that they have been married for 2 years, and this is during this conversation with John, and had been involved for a total of 5 years. And John is basically like, you're a moron because the attorney's going to look at the entirety of your relationship, and I'm going to fight for you've only been together 2 years. Like, she's not entitled to all of your assets. And that's the ways in which he's worried that Steve is going to mess this up.
5 years is not a long time.
No. That's
as of
a blink
recording,
in a
we have
relationship.
been as a podcast together for 5 years.
And it feels like 3 at most.
And so it's until we're talking about it now, it hadn't occurred to me as I'm trying to piece this relationship together more. I can't imagine that.
Well, you don't know each other.
Right, yes.
You're not even who you are yet. Like that, you haven't had time, I guess what I mean is to meet the person like as you are, and then you're that 5 years together, you having a relationship and experiencing things together, changing you both in different ways that are maybe unexpected, like maybe good, maybe bad, like all of those things. 5 years is just like nothing.
Well, and it never says how old they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the conversations, because of the talk of assets, I was thinking 40s.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking a little older than me because these seem like adult problems and I don't feel like an adult.
Yeah. So imagine by the time you are in your mid 30s, you are yourself more or less, for most people anyway. I can't imagine a relationship, like old relationships, less than a year was usually about my average for dating. But as an adult, I could not imagine that short a time.
I'd be like, oh, we just got started.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, we forgot to mention, and we don't have to talk about this. I don't have anything to say about it, but I think it's just a cool visual for this story. When he stops smoking, he does it in a very unique way.
Yeah, he just chucks him out the window because he's done with it.
Have you ever done something like that?
Oh, I've for sure pulled bottles of liquor out and poured them down the sink when I've been really hungover.
But that makes sense. It would be weird if you went outside and dumped them in the lawn. Down the sink is where it goes.
Well, you're also in a city, so littering on the street's not. Like, I imagine that's not as throwing a glass bottle out your window is one, like a soft pack of cigarettes. People throw them out their car windows all the time.
Listeners, I just want to remind you here that Josh grew up in the country. So to him, the city is just streets full of trash.
Covered in trash.
They don't even have garbages. They just out the window, man.
Completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how old I was before I lived in a place where I saw fire hydrants?
Please don't.
Okay, well.
That just, I don't know how that makes me feel. You've had house fires.
2, yeah.
I'm understanding more about your life than I had previously.
Good.
Okay, so we are 15 minutes to the meeting, and Steve has an interesting philosophy on timeliness.
I don't know. I also am kind of if you're not 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late kind of a person.
Yeah, I am too. Unless it's work.
Then it's
And then,
immediately on
well,
time.
yeah, because that's like time that I can't get back that you're not paying me for.
Exactly.
Yeah, so basically it's if you need them to be there, show up 5 minutes early. And if they need you to be there, show up 5 minutes late. And that would just stress me out to show up 5 minutes late. So my philosophy is always like 5 at a minimum, 15 at most.
It's a power play.
Yeah.
Which also, I guess, man, now that we're talking about it, the picture of Steve is becoming more clear of him being a dick.
Yeah.
These are little, just unpleasant things that, for instance, that is just something he believes, not necessarily something that is specific to this situation. It's just how he thinks of the world.
Yeah, so imagine being married to that. Might not be very enjoyable. In any case, he is 15 minutes early. So he goes into a nearby shop and he buys an umbrella because he has nothing better to do, even though it's a sunny day. And later, the umbrella will be all I can think about for several paragraphs. And apparently, umbrellas are possibly dogs. I'm just going to say that right here. We can unpack it when we get there.
Look, we've all thought that.
Oh, that's true. What do you think of the next part when he goes into the restaurant and he does something I think very typical of a lot of people? He's scanning around, looking, because I think you are, like I at least am always anxious going into a restaurant, meeting somebody, and that moment of, will I spot them right away? Or am I going to be like standing around and they're waving at me and I'm just looking right through them, feeling like an idiot? Is that?
That's a very specific anxiety.
Oh.
I walk into every room assuming people look at me when I walk in.
That's not a surprise. I don't know why I set myself up for that.
It's true though. When I walk into a place, I just assume you'll see me.
Just like, here I am.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I'm not subtle.
That's true. See, meeting you in a restaurant never stresses me out because I will know instantly where you are. This is interesting though, because he thinks he sees the back of her, but he's not sure because it's the back of his wife, the person he's been married to for 2 years and has been with for 5 years. I did not think of being able to recognize the back of someone's head that you are with day in, day out as like a knack. Can you recognize your wife from any angle or distance?
I think so. I haven't really tested it, but I would think I could be able to pick my wife out of a crowd pretty easily.
Yeah. I can hear Devin laugh from like 3 blocks away. And I can pick him out of a crowd. Before Steve approaches the table, he has some more like internal dialogue or turmoil. I don't know what you want to call it. He's just thinking about the phases of withdrawal, the physical versus the mental. And the mental being the worst because it can cause depression, mourning, emotional flatline, forgetfulness, transient dyslexia, and feelings of mild unreality. And he researched this after all of the events that we're about to read about because he thought it was important, which this is some pretty heavy foreshadowing. And I missed it here. And it was like rereading it. I realized, oh, this is why his comment about maybe quitting smoking had something to do with what happened.
Oh my God.
Because his reactions and stuff and his perceptions are going to be different. You didn't get that?
No,
okay, that
I
makes
missed
me
that
feel better.
Entirely.
I had to really think about it because when I reread it the second time for our recording, I was like, that part came up. I was like, wait a minute. What happened in the story that had to do with the cigarettes later? And then it finally dawned on me.
And as soon as you said mild unreality, I was like, that's a great phrase for what's about to happen.
That describes everything from this moment on, which we never we never find out if that's a symptom of withdrawal or how it really happened because we only get Steve's version of things.
That's very true. Although I don't
We know it
think
happened, but we don't know if it happened like that.
right. I feel like there is definitely a case for some unreliable narrator, but we know certain facts based on the aftermath that happens to everybody else.
Yeah, we know some shit went down.
Yeah.
Is it as crazy spooky as Steve made it out to be? I hope so. So I had mentioned I was like 18 when I read this the first time. No experience with relationships. So I thought this was just going to be about like a husband and wife getting a divorce, having a terrible dinner with lawyers, and some shenanigans was going to ensue from that. I didn't know it was going to turn into carnage. That's why it like always stuck out to me because I was like, wait, what's happening now? Why is this? So it's really fun to reread it as an adult and like catch all of these moments as sort of like sprinkle in this whatever's happening in here is not right. And this story between this husband and wife is like, it doesn't matter. It is nothing.
Yeah. The what you think is going to be the main story isn't the important part. This instance could have happened to any group of people. It didn't have to be these guys.
It's that really classic, like, I don't remember what that storytelling device is called, but just taking someone's like, not even mundane, because this is an upsetting experience, getting a divorce, but it's kind of typical. So not an out of the ordinary event. And you just put this thing into this other setting.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess I'm kind of a sucker for stories like that.
I was definitely put off by that initial interaction with the maitre d'.
Yeah, go on.
The way this place is described doesn't seem like it should have a stereotypical French maitre d'. Like, it doesn't seem that fancy.
It's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, like it gave me cafe vibes, like nice cafe.
Yeah.
Because how does he describe like the decor when he walks in?
I don't remember, but I know
It's like
wasn't.
it's like bright colors.
Yeah,
and
I was
stuff.
expecting like fancy French restaurant or something, but then it's called the Gotham Cafe, so that evokes a certain sort of architecture as well. And Gotham and French don't really jive in my brain as an aesthetic, you know?
Everything made sense until like the description of the interior, which was
It's also how French the maitre d' is.
he is very
He's
French.
cartoonish. The maitre d' is a cartoon. That's like, and maybe that is part of that unreality that when he retells it, this accent or whatever is so over the top, when in reality it might not have been.
Can I put you on the spot?
Yeah.
Okay, give us your maitre d' accent.
Baguette.
Baguette.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Oui, oui.
So the maitre d' is this tall. Well, I may be making some of this up. I'm going to describe him from the picture I painted in my head. So tell me if yours is different.
Perfect.
He's a tall, thin man, and he has short, slicked back hair, and in the back, a little bit of it is sticking up, which is described like alfalfa. And he has a tiny little thin mustache.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and probably brown eyes.
And I imagined him with kind of a sharp face.
Yeah, angular.
Yeah, very angular.
Sort of like those like wall stickers you see of French chefs, but thin.
Yes.
So he is going to get seated. He sees maybe his wife's head. And in the middle of all of this, the maitre d' suddenly says very loudly in a seemingly upset tone of voice, "You, we don't know who he's referring to, can't bring that dog in here."
With just full of vitriol.
And then Steve kind of like looks up at him because he was looking across the cafe, and it's like it never happened. He is totally normal, and he had been like walking away to lead Steve to the table, and he's looking back like, "Are you coming?"
So umbrellas are dogs.
Because he turns around and there's nobody with a dog.
I like that When he looks back, he sees that there's not a dog there. He sees that the maitre d' is being nonchalant about it. He's basically like, I don't have the mental space to unpack this, so I'm just going to ignore it and move on with my day.
What would you do? Because it's described as being loud enough that it caught the attention of other patrons.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do with that?
On this day, I think I would probably do the same.
Yeah. On any
Enough
other
on my
day,
mind.
probably be like, actually, I have to go.
Right. I don't need to
around.
be here, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll take my dog and go.
Also, the maitre d' has the messy hair. His bow tie is
Askew,
skewed,
yeah.
and he also has what might be blood or jam
Oh, I forgot
on
about
his
that.
shirt.
Yeah.
So there's enough weirdness about how he is presenting
Lots
himself
of red
anyway.
flags.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once Steve is seated, we get a little more marriage in sight because now he is seeing Diane for the first time since she left, and he sees something he doesn't expect on her face, which he thinks looks kind of like anger.
And a little bit of fear.
Yeah. And then he's like, I guess maybe the anger isn't unusual because we did do an awful lot of arguing the last couple months of our 2-year marriage.
And also, this is when we get she's not wearing the dress.
Yeah.
The dress was described as like a evening gown almost. And
Which
this
would
is
not work.
Very modest.
Well, I don't think as a man he understands. She doesn't want you to fucking look at her.
Right.
I'm surprised she's not wearing a burlap sack.
And that's the moment that he says it almost like a how dare she not dress up for me.
Well, he gets pissed off here too because she didn't do what he anticipated. And then he doesn't feel like he deserves that look of anger and fear. And we never get to know whether or not he does because, again, not what the story is about at all. What was your thought on Steve taking in Diane and Humboldt once he sits down?
Definitely Humboldt. He assesses him as already having had probably 2 drinks while they've been waiting in just like the 5 minutes.
I love at some point later, he's like, I bet he wishes he'd have had a couple more.
Yeah. And once Humboldt sees that his lawyer's not there, the grin is on his face. His cheeks turn all rosy because he can't even hide that. He's like, this is going to be the best day ever.
Diane is not happy about that, though, at all. She's basically like, I think there is fear there. I think Steve is right because she is also angry now, but she is directing all of her anger at her attorney, Humboldt. Like it's his fault that it didn't work out the way it was supposed to.
It's so clear that she's so on edge because there's the moment later where he brings up very tangentially some reconciliation and she jumps on her lawyer and she's like, you said this wouldn't come up. You said none of this would happen. And so we can see that she's at an 11.
Yeah, I do feel for her in that moment. Because
I don't know anymore.
Well, and not I'm setting hindsight aside.
Sure.
In that moment, I do because I guess I feel for her because all Steve wants to talk about is why she left, and I don't think that's unreasonable that he'd want an explanation. But we kind of get the impression here from her reaction to that he should damn well know why she left.
That also confused me because first thing I went to was a domestic violence situation because not seeing her face before she left.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that makes sense.
And the fact that it's so sudden, the fact that she leaves when he's gone and she's all the way gone and just a note, that's what that made me think of, like a fear for her life and her physical well-being.
No, it seems, I think that's a very reasonable assumption to make, but it seems like she just gradually could not stand him to the point where she was like, I can't do this anymore. And he seems like he would miss like all of those signs and signals, overt and covert. Just like, everything's fine because I want it to be, because I'm Steve.
That's the thing that bothers me about this 5-year relationship, the stuff we don't know, because it's in talking about how he never hit her, but he smoked. And that's when we get the reveal of she wouldn't even try to get pregnant if he was still smoking. Being as old as we are, How long would you stay with somebody who had things that were deal breakers for you thinking they would change?
No.
Exactly. Yeah.
As as a
The
younger
no length of
person,
time.
yeah, as a younger person, that's like par for the course almost, it seems.
Yeah, I can
And
change
maybe
them. Sure.
she's younger than he is too.
That could
Because we
be.
don't know, like, if they're the same age or if he had kind of a, she could be in her early 20s, he could be in his late 30s,
I
early
guess that does
40s.
make sense because the lawyer tells him you don't sell anything. You
Yeah, it seemed like he
assuming
was
maybe he has the
established more
okay.
so than she was, maybe. Not that she wasn't as well, but
I could see that.
because I think we do get a little bit of family stuff that, maybe they're in a similar class, but I don't know.
Yeah. I just couldn't imagine the example of she left because he wouldn't quit smoking, needing the kind of dramatic exit that being out completely with a detached note. I was trying, like, the stakes just aren't big enough.
Okay, I think I know what's happening here. Oh boy, am I going to have to get personal?
Oh no.
Oh no, not like in a terrible way. I have previously been married. And I think, so I'm interpreting this through my own experience. So to me, what has happened in the marriage, which I can say this because we don't get enough to tell me I'm right or wrong, is that she was unhappy for a long time. And because they have different styles of communicating, neither of them were ever able to communicate that in a way where she could make him understand there was a problem and he got that. And so to her, she's been trying and she's finally tired of it. And once you hit that point where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm out, like you are completely done. Cause he says here shortly, like, hey, we can do marriage counseling. I quit smoking. Like now he's trying to do all the things that she wanted from him before, but he's only doing them like at this moment when it's too late and the stakes
Mhm.
are so high, which doesn't show, like me, for example, as a woman in that situation, like doesn't show me that you value me because it's like, well, you're just doing this to try to get me to come back,
Mhm.
not because it's important to you that, we change and grow together.
Yeah, well, it's manipulative.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But again, I go back to how did they get married? Like, how were they together for 3 years, then decided to get married and only last for 2 before this happened?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's so many questions about this shitstorm this relationship had to be.
Hmm.
And because the way it's presented to us, we really feel like it's all one sided on Steve. I don't. Later on, we get the sense that's not the
I'm
case.
gonna flip so hard on her by the end.
But it also, this is another thing of even when she's throwing these things at Steve, he still responds unkindly. And he's the narrator where he says
Yeah.
something after I quit smoking. And she's like, good for you. Great.
Yeah, she doesn't give a shit.
I don't
Go fuck
fucking care.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You smoke forever. I'll
I'd
never see
smoke
you
till you
again. I
die.
don't fucking care.
Yeah.
He says, and it's the I didn't hit her, and then I never hit her, and then the next sentence is I want to grab her and shake her and say, don't you see what you're throwing away? Don't you see? Like, it's
Hmm.
bad.
Hmm.
It's a bad scene. Don't get me wrong, these people should be getting divorced. The thing is, these people never should have been married.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the unanswered, we'll never,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah.
While all of this is happening, they're having this conversation, people are getting upset. Something is building up with Guy, who is our, our maitre d'. And we're just gonna let that kind of do its thing in the background here for a few more minutes. And they continue to have some bickering, and Humboldt is scolding them, and Steve is able to kind of calm himself down a little bit. And he notices his umbrella and that he didn't take the tag off. And he's kind of like embarrassed because it's clear he literally just bought it on a sunny day, which is weird. And I only mention it because it's important that we do not forget that the umbrella is there. And from this moment on, it's just like, okay, why? Why are you telling me about this? He bought it. Like, isn't that the end? Things are shortly interrupted when Guy bursts back into the restaurant from the kitchen, disheveled and hunched over with his hands behind his back. What did you think about his grand entrance?
I was honestly didn't take in a single bit of that physical description because I couldn't stop imagining the tea kettle sound he's making
Mhm.
and wondering how a human makes that. Like it was such a specific sound that all I could think of was this guy's face and that sound coming out. I'm like, what does that even sound like? How do you do that?
Yeah, he's making this super high pitched, like it must be like coming from up in sort of like the nasal area of your face. This high pitched like ee sound and spouting words. The like stringing words together.
There are
How do I
words.
describe? How would you
Yeah.
describe that?
It's incoherent rambling,
It's
basically.
word salad.
Yeah.
Was there anything you really particularly liked that he said or stuck out to you? Do you have a favorite?
I do not. I was more so excited by Humboldt's reaction
Yes,
to it
do tell.
because he takes this as a personal offense because
Yeah.
he picked the place. And so if this is going to make him look bad,
Well, that's what Steve thinks.
yeah. And he's already a few drinks in.
Mhm.
And so Humboldt yells at him and gets up, never for a second thinking about the fact that he can't see either of this man's hands until he does. And there's a giant butcher knife in them, and it goes right into Humboldt's head or his cheek.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
slices open his face. Steve can see his teeth. And so he crashes down to his chair, trying to hold his face together. And Diane and Steve are just like, what the fuck? And people are starting to panic and scream and jump up and run for the exit.
The Troy. We only get his name because the lady yells. Troy just runs out of the restaurant, leaving his date in there.
Part of me did think in that moment, like, that's a good test of a first date.
I
I
would
would
be
never
mad
go
that
back
she
out
didn't
with-
run.
See,
Like,
I would
she
never go
missed
back
it.
out with Troy. I'd be like, you left me, motherfucker.
I would, if I was Troy, I would get out and be like, yeah, this never would have worked because she
can't run
would
as
die.
fast. So Humboldt is holding his face together, sitting in his chair. And this is where Guy takes the butcher knife and just stabs it right down into the top of Humboldt's head.
The human skull is so hard.
Yeah.
I think we forget that because of all the zombie movies that exist,
Yeah.
and apparently, like a butter knife just goes straight through a skull on The Walking Dead.
Well, they're rotted.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're
Yes.
soft.
That's sure, yeah. Putting a butcher knife straight down through the top of someone's head cannot be an easy feat.
No, you've got to be really upset at that person, I feel like.
Luckily, Humboldt was sitting, so he had the angle.
Yeah, that's true. So we get more of what seems to be the problem here with Guy. So he's upset that Steve brought in his umbrella dog, which is sincerely the only thing this guy says that makes sense. Everything else is more outlandish and nonsensical than that. It's like, okay, I got it. You think this umbrella is a dog. Okay.
Okay. My umbrella won't let you sleep, is what you're trying to tell me.
Yes, because he's going on about sounds people are making and being loud and loud music. It sounds like this guy has some shit roommates.
Yes.
And he's finally had enough and he's going to kill everybody. I think. I don't know. It's still kind of hard. I do love this next scene though. This is such a cool action sequence when Steve leaps up and he's grabbing for Diane, which good for him. Obviously he still like loves her or whatever he feels for her. If we call it love, I don't know. So he's still thinking about her and trying to help her. And Guy is coming at him and all he has is his dog umbrella. So he's like jabbing at him with it and it pops open and he can't see Guy behind it anymore, which
so scary for just a split second.
Have you ever been in that position?
In haunted houses.
Yeah.
When you have like the person kind of stalking you and then you lose sight of them and you're like, oh God, they're going to be somewhere around. That kind of anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling. So we have this scuffle between them. Steve gets his dog umbrella under control and grabs Diane.
It reminded me a little bit of Tommy Knockers.
Yeah. When guard
Yeah.
attacks the guy
Sword
with the umbrella.
fights.
Makes him have a heart attack with an
Yeah.
umbrella. Steve grabs Diane and he starts dragging her towards the kitchen because the front door is just blocked by people trying to get out. They're all trying to get out at the same time. And Guy is only chasing Steve.
Which I wonder if he would have kept chasing him if he'd just dropped the umbrella.
Yeah, like,
I
here,
don't know.
take the dog.
Kill my
Stab
dog
the
umbrella.
Oh.
It's when they sprint through and they go past everybody else in the kitchen, and he thinks that it doesn't make sense that everyone back here is normal.
They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just still cooking and prepping and
they're just like, fuck it, we're heading to the back door. And this poor chef.
oh.
Man. And that's another thing that we talked about, the unrealness of, we probably do have a little bit of unreliable narrator because of where his head is. But all we get is the chef trying to go talk to Guy, and then he hears,
Presumably he knows him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all Steve hears is a wet sound and then like a slopping sound, and he's like, I'm not going to turn around to find out what that is because I don't want to know.
We do find out what it is, though.
Yeah.
It is the chef's guts.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy spends the rest of the story trying to hold them in. I never want to have to hold in my guts.
To his credit, he keeps them in.
He does. Good for him.
Yeah.
So Steve and Diane basically find themselves backed up against this deadbolted door leading to the alley.
Well, before we get to the deadbolt, I want to run through the violence that happens to Guy.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there.
Because, there's some stuff that happens before he gets to the door. Oh,
before they get to the door. Yeah.
Because they throw boiling water on him, throwing it at his face, and it makes him cartoonishly stumble backwards and fall onto a stovetop.
Ooh.
He leans back to catch himself and puts his hand on the lit stovetop.
He puts it into fire in a kitchen. That is a powerful burner.
And he appears to not register the pain of either of these things whatsoever. You would have had me at burning water in my face. Mm-hmm. And he just keeps coming at him. And then, then they reach that door. I just wanted to point out that he's already sustained injuries that would end a fight.
Probably third-degree burns.
Yes.
So Steve and Diane are backed against the door. He's kind of crushing her against the door.
I do. It's open the door. I can't because I can't move anywhere.
It's like he's trying to push his body through hers and out the door. And all he has to arm himself with is, first that boiling pot of water, then a mop and a bucket. This scene is so cartoonish, but it's not. If Ben were here with us, he probably would be laughing at it.
Yeah.
And you and I would be like, it's so cool.
I was definitely laughing a little bit. It's the same horrifying comedy like the beginning of Cell. We talked about where it's so slapstick, but the fact that no one's laughing is what makes it horrifying.
Yeah, that it's what's the word? Not terminal. What's the other word for terminal? It's slapstick, but the stakes are like death.
Oh, I see.
Why can't I?
It's fatal slapstick.
Fatal slapstick. That's what I'm going to call things like that from now on.
Yes, it's fatal slapstick.
Nice, I like that. So they're grappling with the door. Steve is constantly checking in with Diane, how you coming on that deadbolt? While he's fending off this butcher knife wielding, Freddy Krueger looking probably now madman. And she's not unlocking the door, Josh. Why is that?
Because she can't. He's pressed her against it.
Well, when he pulls away a little bit.
Oh, she's not strong enough, right?
No. She's just standing there frozen with fear. She tells him, I can't.
When she said I can't, I thought she was saying she couldn't physically open it.
Yeah, initially she was, and then he moved away a little bit, and then she's just standing there watching this, frozen in fear.
Yeah, I misread. See, I thought, he had her pressed against it, and then once she had some room, she still couldn't get it. All right, yeah.
She wasn't opening it. So, and I mentioned that's an important distinction to make because of what happens next, which might
I
I don't
cannot
know if that'll
fucking
change
believe
the
this.
way that you feel about it, knowing like that she was just frozen and wasn't even trying to open it. But he starts yelling at her, like calling her a bitch because he's so terrified because Guy has gotten the knife close enough that he can like feel the breeze of it passing by his face. The only thing that saves him is that Guy slips on, I think, something from the, like some
Water
mess
from
from
the
the pot.
bucket.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
something. And like lands on his back long enough for Steve to basically like take the mop and bring it down on his neck. Like he's trying to chop his head off with the head of a mop. That gives him enough time to unbolt the door. But before he was able to do that, he was put in a precarious position. Do you want to talk about what happened with him and Diane?
This was so confusing at
Yeah, it
first.
was, yes.
And I love it because he has such tunnel vision fighting Guy that all of a sudden it's just described as he is thrown forward. I thought she finally got the door open, pulled it, and
yeah,
bumped
hit it,
him.
yeah.
No, she kicked him in the ass
After he called her a dumb
and
bitch.
called her a dumb bitch and sent him into Guy a little bit. Like, could have easily gotten him killed.
And he thinks that was her goal.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. We'll get there, but so they leave.
Oh, also before that final blow is he grabs a frying pan that was on something and hits him in the face.
Yes.
Which should have killed him.
Yeah.
By this point.
It's brutal. So they get outside into the alley and basically have the fight that should have ended their marriage that Steve wanted to have so he could understand what in the world is going on. What do you think about this?
I was really surprised, honestly. Like I really
going through something like that.
Right. Well, and then it doesn't help that he puts hands on her immediately and shoves her because he's like, run, and she's not. And so he gives her a shove, and then that sets her off back at him like, don't you fucking ever touch me again.
She doesn't care about anything that just happened. All she cared about was getting through this divorce and not having to deal with him, except for as much as she absolutely had to.
She fucking tears into him like crazy.
She is not grateful that he saved her life at all.
And then then they start hearing Guy banging on the door trying to get back out that he's still not down.
Yeah, Steve has to like hold the door closed while they're having this epic marriage ending fight.
He runs after her once she's gotten down the alley. He runs to catch up with her, and then they yell at each other some more on the street corner, again giving us no information about their relationship, just that they hate each other. And this is when he calls her out on, you kicked me, you could have killed me. And that she's like, I've wanted to kick you in the ass for a long time. We don't always get to choose our time and place. Fucking insane. That's fucking insane.
What happened between them that was her reaction?
And the fact that right after he slaps her across the face and he admits it made him happy.
Like, not okay to put hands on people. I understand all of that just happened between them, I feel like.
Yeah, it's fucking insane. It doesn't make any sense. It's
but
so insane.
What it does, though, is it makes us kind of feel more like, what in the fuck, you guys, about them fighting than this guy
yeah,
flipping out and killing people.
I didn't think I would be completely thrown off by the fact that we have this massive fight scene and all of a sudden she just says, I had lovers. Like,
That's
what? Why? Or why are we talking about this?
That's like your penis is tiny and ugly. Like, you're just like, you just slapped me. How can I hurt you the most? I got it. You have an ugly dick.
It's tiny and ugly.
Words of wisdom from my mom. If you ever want to really damage a guy, I've never done this because I'm like, wow, Mom, tell him he has an ugly dick. That's the kind of advice I got as a teenager.
I don't know anybody that, as a man who has said they have a beautiful dick. So
Yeah, but if a woman takes the time to point out your dick is ugly as she's breaking up with you, I feel like you'd think about that. You'd be like, is my dick ugly?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd spend the next 4 years thinking about that.
Like Googling, what's an ugly dick?
Why is your Google image search just dicks?
Anyway, so yeah, she tries to hurt him by saying I've had lovers, and he can tell looking at her face that it's a lie and she wants to hurt him.
Is it? Can he tell?
That's
Can
what he
he tell
says.
fucking anything?
Well, this would be the first time in their marriage he could tell something. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, what the fuck was this relationship? It's so bananas. What did you think she meant when after the lovers thing she storms off and he yells after her like, fuck's wrong with you? I saved your life. And she turns back and smiles at him and says, no, you didn't. What does that mean?
I was wondering if it was more she's speaking to their marriage. Like, no, you didn't because I got away from you. You almost ruined my life, not saved it. Like, she's talking about their marriage. He's talking about what just happened. That's
interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. Huh.
What did it make you think?
It made me think she's a psychopath. It made me think that these two characters are criminally insane people.
Or did he not save her life because he grabbed her and drug her with him? He was the focus of guys. The only reason Humboldt got slashed and stabbed is because he interacted with Guy. He confronted him. He was focused on the dog umbrella and Steve the whole time. If Steve had just bolted for the back door, I don't think he would have taken the time to kill Diane. He would have just followed him. So in trying to save her, he put her in harm's way. Like, not intentionally, but he was focused on him from the very beginning.
Would you be able to process that thought 5 minutes after it happened, though? Like, that seems like a perspective you could come to later. Immediately
no, she had
following.
Plenty of time because she's just standing there watching them fight when she should be unlocking the door.
How long in minutes did you imagine it was from the burst into the kitchen and out the back door?
Wow, I didn't think about that. Let's see.
Because we have this so many times in books because obviously when you're in the narrator's mind and they're telling something in the past, you get all the details. So a few minutes, or we just covered the regulators. We know that you can have an entire book in 20 minutes.
Yeah. I would say it was probably 5 minutes at a minimum.
2.
Really?
Yes.
Cool, because they run through the kitchen.
It's a small building.
The chef stops him. He attacks the chef. They're having their back and forth, like, unbolt the door. I can't, you're crushing me. He moves and he's fending him off. The boiling water, the frying pan, he slips, the mop, the 2 knife swipes that almost get Steve. She kicks him in the ass. Huh.
I can't imagine it took more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, and I guess she wasn't up there when he said that initial thing to Steve. Man, I thought I had it figured out too. That was a really good, like, attempt for me.
No, that first perspective, I think, is the right one. Mm-hmm. That it also could add a detail to their relationship if he always treated it as though he saved her from something by bringing her into his life. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of fits the narcissistic, rich,
like,
more
I
wealthy
made your life better. And
person.
She's like, you don't even know how miserable I've been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Well, and with the exception of him buying a pack of cigarettes and then trying to smoke them and then stamping them out in a really abrasive way until a cop is like, dude, can you chill? Can't you see we have some shit going on?
It's because he starts making the tea kettle sound while he does it.
Yeah.
Like that. I liked Pontypool-esque.
Yeah.
Of the language disease.
Ooh, you're right. Yeah, that is pretty cool.
That would be like, I wonder if tomorrow Steve's going to lose his mind and start, it's not hissing. Whistle.
Whistle, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Tea kettle's hissing.
That hissing tea kettle. Okay. That'd be like a gothic tea kettle.
Yeah, of course.
And anyway, that is the end of the short story Lunch at the Gotham Cafe.
All right, let's rate it.
Yeah.
This is so crazy because I want to see it so bad.
Yes,
I
yeah.
just know that it would cost $1 million to do this short because of how much detail and like how insane it has to be. I really like it. I do, though, wonder if it is going to be one that sticks with me. And I don't know that I'm super excited to revisit it. So I'm going to go 4 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
That's interesting because I've gone back and forth on my rating listening to you just in the 20 seconds that you're giving yours, which does tell me that 2 minutes is actually quite a long time.
Oh my God.
And she could have processed that. What was I doing? No, this story sticks out to me just because of the turn it takes. So I think that's why I remembered it. To your point, though, it's not one that I'm like, oh, this is just so fun to read. I'm going to reread it. It is very compelling and well written, though. So I think I kind of have to temper how much I liked it with how good it is. And I'm going to go 4 out of 5 blue chambray shirts, too.
That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode. For CM Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, I can't have a dog. It's in the lease.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to Everything's Eventual Lunch at the Gotham Cafe. We hope you enjoyed it. Before I give you the reading for the next book we're covering, I'm going to quickly plug all our stuff. I know, I'm making you sit through this. It's almost like we're having lunch together, but you really don't want to be here. Why'd you bring your lawyer? I just wanted to see you. Okay, sorry, got off track. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio and X at Derry Public, where I promise to be much less creepy. You can also send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. Check out our Etsy and Patreon for lots of cool, extra, special, fun merch and bonus episodes. Search Derry Public Radio on both of those platforms. And chat with us on our Discord, which is linked in the show notes. Join us for our next episode, where we will be reading Duma Key through Part 4, Family Portrait. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.